Every financial journey begins with a belief that shapes how we work, how we spend, how we save, and how we dream. But what if the beliefs you grew up with are the very thing holding you back? In Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki introduces us to the two most important teachers in his life: his biological father, whom he calls Poor Dad, and his best friend's father, whom he calls Rich Dad. Two men, two completely different ways of seeing the world, and two mindsets that lead to two very different financial destinies. The two fathers who shaped a life. Poor Dad was everything society respects: a well-educated man, a man with a good job, a man who believed in stability, safety, and traditional success. He believed that working hard, earning a steady paycheck, and climbing the career ladder were the keys to financial security. He repeated the same advice that millions of parents give their children: study hard, get good grades, find a secure job, work until you retire. But the reality behind this advice was painful. Despite his education, despite his intelligence, despite his hard work, Poor Dad struggled financially his entire life. He lived paycheck to paycheck, worried about bills, feared losing his job, and felt trapped inside the system he thought would protect him. On the other hand, Rich Dad had little formal education. He didn't graduate from the best schools. He didn't have a secure job. He wasn't admired by society in the beginning, but he understood something far more important. He understood how money works. While Poor Dad worked for money, Rich Dad learned how to make money work for him. Different advice, different results. Poor Dad told Robert, "You need a good job to survive." Rich Dad told him, "You need assets to be free." Poor Dad said, "Money is the root of all evil." Rich Dad said, "Lack of money is the root of evil." Poor Dad believed in saving. Rich Dad believed in investing. Poor Dad looked for security. Rich Dad looked for opportunity. Poor Dad feared risk. Rich Dad feared living an unchanged life. These weren't just different opinions. They were two opposite philosophies about how the world works. And young Robert was in the middle, observing both sides, and realizing that the difference between the rich and the poor wasn't money. It was a mindset. The early lessons. When Robert was just 9 years old, he and his friend Mike wanted to learn how to become rich. Poor Dad told them to study hard and find a job. Rich Dad told them to learn how money works. Rich Dad didn't give them easy lessons. Instead, he made them work in his stores for almost nothing. Not because he needed the labor, but because he wanted them to understand something far more valuable. Most people become trapped because they work for money without understanding it. So Rich Dad challenged them: if you want to be rich, you must learn to think differently. Don't think like an employee. Think like an investor. Think like an owner. These experiences shaped Robert's understanding at a young age. While Poor Dad believed that education happens only in schools, Rich Dad believed that real education happens in life, from mentors, failures, challenges, experiments, risks, and opportunities. Be the foundation of the book. Part 1 of the book sets the stage for everything that comes later. It teaches us that wealth is not about how much you earn, it's about how you think. Poverty is not a lack of money, it's a lack of financial knowledge. Freedom doesn't come from your job, it comes from understanding money. The biggest difference between rich and poor is mindset, not salary. Poor Dad followed the traditional path and ended up struggling. Rich Dad built a different path and ended up achieving financial freedom. And this is the powerful message of Part 1. If you want a different life, you must adopt a different mindset. You cannot become rich with the beliefs that keep people poor. You cannot achieve freedom with the habits that keep people trapped. You cannot grow if you think like everyone else. Robert realized that both fathers loved him, but only one taught him how to escape the cycle of working endlessly for money. Conclusion of Part 1. This chapter teaches us the most important truth. Your financial life begins in your mind, not your bank account. Two fathers, two philosophies, two futures. Which one will you choose? Because the journey to wealth does not start with earning, it starts with thinking differently. This is part one. See you in the second part of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.